Hi everyone, I'm Sarah, and 3 years ago I watched my own brother pitch my revolutionary app idea to investors, while I sat in the audience, powerless to stop him. He walked away with $2 million in funding for software I'd spent 18 months developing in secret. What he didn't know was that the quiet man sitting beside me in that conference room wasn't just my supportive boyfriend, he was one of the most ruthless patent attorneys in Silicon Valley. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. And when Marcus finally discovered what my brother had stolen, he didn't just make him pay back the money. He made sure the entire tech world knew exactly who the real innovator was. It started on a Tuesday morning in October, when the Seattle rain hammered against my apartment windows like nature's own percussion section. I was hunched over my laptop at the kitchen table, surrounded by empty coffee cups and crumpled napkins covered in algorithmic sketches. The blue glow from my screen illuminated the dark circles under my eyes, evidence of another sleepless night spent perfecting the user interface for what I knew would change everything. MindBridge wasn't just another meditation app. It was a sophisticated piece of software that used biometric feedback to create personalized mindfulness experiences, adapting in real time to a user's stress levels, heart rate variability, and even sleep patterns. I'd been developing it for over a year, teaching myself advanced programming languages during lunch breaks at my day job as a UX designer for a small marketing firm. Every evening after work, every weekend, every spare moment had been poured into this project. The apartment I shared with Marcus was cluttered with my research. Medical journals about stress reduction lay stacked beside psychology textbooks I'd borrowed from the university library. My whiteboard was covered in flowcharts mapping out user journeys and data collection points. Sticky notes with breakthrough ideas decorated every surface like colorful confetti celebrating small victories. Marcus would often find me like this when he came home from his law office, completely absorbed in my work. As a patent attorney specializing in intellectual property disputes, he understood the consuming nature of innovation. He'd quietly make dinner, set a plate beside my laptop, and kiss the top of my head before settling into his own evening routine of reviewing case files and legal briefs. That particular Tuesday, I was finalizing the prototype's core algorithm when my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed a picture of my brother Danny grinning widely, taken at last Christmas when everything between us was still normal. We'd grown up together in Portland, just 2 years apart, and had always been close despite our different paths. Danny had followed our father into finance, working his way up at a prestigious investment firm, while I'd chosen the creative route of design and technology. "Hey, stranger." Danny's voice carried that familiar warmth that made me smile despite my exhaustion. "How's the hermit life treating you?" I leaned back in my chair, rolling my shoulders to work out the knots. "Oh, living the dream. Coffee for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. What's up?" "Actually, I wanted to run something by you. I'm thinking about making a career change, maybe getting into the tech startup scene. You know how passionate I've always been about wellness and mental health, especially after Mom's anxiety issues last year. This wasn't entirely surprising. Danny had mentioned during recent family dinners that he was feeling burned out from the high-pressure world of finance. Our mother's struggle with severe anxiety following our father's heart attack had affected all of us, but Danny had taken it particularly hard. "That's exciting," I said, genuinely pleased. "What kind of direction are you thinking?" "Well, that's where I was hoping you could help. You're the tech genius in the family, and I know you understand the mental health space. I've been researching apps that help with meditation and stress management, but everything out there seems so generic. Cookie-cutter guided meditations that don't really adapt to individual needs." My fingers froze over the keyboard. The similarity to my own project was uncanny, but I told myself it was just natural convergent thinking. Mental health tech was a growing field, and anyone paying attention would notice the same gaps in the market. "What are you envisioning exactly?" I asked carefully. "Something revolutionary, an app that actually learns from users, that responds to their biological signals and creates personalized experiences. Imagine if technology could read your stress levels and automatically adjust the meditation accordingly. heart rate integration, sleep pattern analysis, maybe even AI-powered recommendations. Every word he spoke described exactly what I'd been building. My stomach tightened, but I pushed down the paranoid thoughts. This was my brother, the person who taught me to ride a bike and defended me from bullies in middle school. He was probably just thinking along similar lines because we'd both witnessed Mom's struggles. That does sound innovative, I managed. Have you done any research into the technical feasibility? Some, but honestly, that's way over my head. I'm more of the business development and funding side. I was actually wondering if you'd be interested in consulting on a project like this. Maybe helping me understand what's possible from a development standpoint. The offer hung in the air between us. Part of me wanted to tell him everything right then, to share my excitement about MindBridge and maybe even propose a partnership. Danny had always been brilliant, with business strategy and investor relations, skills I sorely lacked. But something held me back. An instinct I couldn't quite name. Let me think about it, I said. I'm pretty swamped with work right now, but maybe we could talk more over coffee sometime. Absolutely. No pressure at all. I'm just in the early brainstorming phase anyway. After we hung up, I stared at my laptop screen for a long time. The MindBridge interface stared back at me. Months of work distilled into clean, intuitive design. I'd been planning to file for provisional patents soon, but the process felt overwhelming and expensive on my designer's salary. Marcus had offered to help pro bono, but I'd wanted to prove I could handle it myself. When Marcus arrived home that evening, he found me pacing the living room, my laptop closed for once. Rough day? He asked, loosening his tie. Marcus was tall and lean, with dark hair that had just started showing silver at the temples. His suits were always perfectly tailored, a necessity in his line of work. But I loved him most in moments like this, when he shed the professional armor and just became the man who left me handwritten notes in my coffee mug. Danny called today. He wants to get into tech, specifically meditation and mental health apps. Marcus hung his jacket over the back of a chair and studied my expression. That's quite a coincidence. That's what I thought. He described almost exactly what I've been working on. Same target market, same technical approach, even similar features. Sarah. Marcus's voice carried the careful tone he used when he was about to say something I might not want to hear. Have you shown him your work? Even casually. No, never. I mean, he knows I'm working on some kind of app, but I've been really secretive about the details. You're literally the only person who's seen the actual prototype. Marcus nodded slowly. Great minds think alike, I suppose. But given what you've told me about your family dynamics, it might be wise to protect your intellectual property sooner rather than later. I'd shared enough stories about Danny's competitive streak for Marcus to understand the concern. Growing up, my brother had a habit of adopting my interests and somehow making them his own. When I started playing piano, he convinced our parents to get him lessons too, then practiced twice as hard until he was the one performing at recitals. When I joined the debate team in high school, he transferred schools specifically to join a more competitive program. It wasn't malicious, exactly, but there was always this underlying need for him to be the best at whatever I cared about. Maybe you're right, I admitted. I've been putting off the patent application because it feels so final, like I'm declaring this as ready when I still see a million ways to improve it. The beauty of provisional patents is that they give you time to refine while establishing priority, Marcus explained, shifting into attorney mode. We could file something basic to protect your core innovations, then build on it as you develop the technology further. That night, I lay awake listening to the rain against our bedroom window, Marcus breathing steadily beside me. The conversation with Danny replayed in my mind, his enthusiasm for ideas that mirrored my own so perfectly. I wanted to believe it was coincidence, that two siblings could independently arrive at similar innovations. But sleep wouldn't come, and by morning I'd made a decision. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus and I worked together to prepare a comprehensive provisional patent application for MindBridge. He guided me through the process of documenting every technical detail, every innovative feature, every piece of code that made my app unique. We worked late into the evenings, transforming my scattered notes and prototypes into precise legal language that would protect my creation. This is really impressive work, Sarah, Marcus said one night as we reviewed the application. The integration of biometric feedback with adaptive AI is genuinely groundbreaking. You should be proud of what you've built. I just hope it's actually as innovative as I think it is. Sometimes when you're so close to a project, you lose perspective. Trust me, I've seen hundreds of tech patents. This is special. We filed the provisional patent on a Friday afternoon in November. I felt a mix of relief and terror as Marcus submitted the paperwork electronically, officially establishing my claim to the innovations I'd spent over a year developing. That weekend, we celebrated with dinner at our favorite Italian restaurant, toasting to whatever came next. Danny called again the following Monday. Hey, I know you've been busy, but I wanted to update you on that app idea we discussed. I've been doing more research, and I think I'm ready to move forward with development. I was hoping we could meet up and talk specifics. Sure, I said, though my stomach churned. What did you have in mind? How about coffee this Saturday? There's this great place in Fremont I've been wanting to try. And Sarah, I really appreciate you being willing to help with this. Family supporting family, right?
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Saturday morning found me sitting across from Danny in a bustling coffee shop, steam rising from our mugs, while rain painted abstract patterns on the large windows. He looked excited in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids, his eyes bright with the kind of enthusiasm that had always been infectious. So I've been thinking more about this meditation app concept, he began, pulling out a leather portfolio. I've done some market analysis, and the demand is definitely there. The existing solutions are all so basic, just timer apps with pre-recorded audio. There's a huge opportunity for something more sophisticated. He opened the portfolio to reveal printed pages covered in charts, graphs, and bullet points. As he talked me through his research, I recognized many of the pain points I'd identified in my own development process. The market size estimates were similar to ones I'd calculated. Even his target demographic analysis matched my user personas almost exactly. The key innovation, Danny continued, would be real-time biometric integration. Imagine an app that monitors your heart rate, stress levels, maybe even sleep patterns, and automatically adjusts the meditation experience. Instead of one-size-fits-all content, it would be completely personalized. Every word sent ice through my veins. He wasn't just describing a similar concept anymore. He was outlining MindBridge's exact feature set, down to specific implementation details I'd never shared with anyone except Marcus. Where are you getting these ideas? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, I've been doing tons of research. Medical journals, user experience studies, even some basic technical feasibility analysis. I've probably read 50 articles about biometric feedback in the past month. He flipped to another page showing a rough wireframe sketch. The layout was different from mine, but the core functionality was identical. Heart rate monitoring in the top right corner. Stress level indicators along the bottom. Even the color scheme was suspiciously similar to my prototype. Danny, this is remarkably detailed for preliminary research. Yeah, I've really thrown myself into this. You know how I get when I'm passionate about something. He grinned with that boyish charm that had gotten him out of trouble our entire childhood. I'm thinking about pitching this to some investors soon. Strike while the iron is hot, you know? Investors? Already? Don't you think you should build a prototype first? That's actually where I was hoping you could help. I know you're busy with your own projects, but maybe you could point me in the right direction for development resources. I'm thinking about hiring a team, really doing this properly. I stared at my coffee, watching the foam slowly dissolve. Everything about this conversation felt wrong, but I couldn't prove anything. Maybe Danny really had done independent research and arrived at similar conclusions. Maybe the similarities were just bad luck. But the detail level in his analysis suggested months of work, not the few weeks since our first conversation. I need to think about this, I said finally. Of course, take your time. But Sarah, I really hope you'll consider joining the project officially. We could be partners, like we always talked about when we were kids. The Whitman siblings taking on Silicon Valley. The drive home through Seattle traffic gave me time to process what had just happened. By the time I pulled into our building's garage, I was convinced that Danny had somehow accessed my work. But how? I'd been so careful, keeping everything on my personal laptop, never discussing details with family or friends. Marcus was in the kitchen when I walked in, reading case files at the breakfast bar while classical music played softly in the background. He looked up as I entered, immediately reading the distress on my face. How did it go? He knows everything, Marcus. Every feature, every technical approach, even implementation details I've never told anyone. He's planning to pitch it to investors. Marcus set down his papers and gave me his full attention. Tell me exactly what he said. I recounted the entire conversation, including Danny's uncannily specific wireframes and technical analysis. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious with each detail. Sarah, this level of specificity isn't coincidence. If he's independently researching the same space, he might arrive at similar high-level concepts, but not identical technical implementations. But how could he know? I've been so careful. Let's think through this systematically. Who has had access to your laptop? Who might have seen your notes or prototypes? I mentally retraced the past few months. My laptop rarely left my sight, and I'd never worked on MindBridge at the office or in public spaces. The only times it had been unattended were here at home, where only Marcus had access. Then I remembered Thanksgiving. Oh, God, I whispered. Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' house. I brought my laptop because I wanted to work on some bug fixes during downtime. Danny was there, obviously, and I left it charging in the guest bedroom a few times. Did he have opportunity to access it without supervision? Definitely. There were probably hours when I was helping Mom in the kitchen or talking with relatives in the living room. And I never password protect my development environment when I'm working at home. I just close the laptop. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. If he copied your files, we need to document everything immediately. Timestamps, file metadata, anything that proves when you created the original work. We spent the rest of the afternoon going through my laptop with forensic detail. Marcus helped me export file creation dates, backup logs, and version histories that established a clear timeline of MindBridge's development. Every piece of code, every design iteration, every research note had digital fingerprints proving I'd been working on this project for over a year. This is strong evidence, Marcus said as we compiled the documentation. But you know what would make it ironclad? If we could prove he accessed your files specifically. How would we do that? Most operating systems keep access logs, but they're usually buried pretty deep. Let me see what we can find. Marcus navigated to system folders I'd never seen before, pulling up logs of file access timestamps. Most of the entries were from my own work sessions, but there were anomalies. On Thanksgiving Day, several of my MindBridge files had been accessed during hours when I was definitely not using my laptop. There, Marcus pointed to the screen. These timestamps show someone opened your prototype files, your research documents, and your code repository between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Do you remember what you were doing during that time? That's when we were watching the game in the living room. I was in there with everyone else. My laptop was definitely upstairs charging. And Danny was at the house? He disappeared for a while, actually. Said he was taking a business call, but now that I think about it, that was right around this time frame. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his jaw set in the determined expression I'd learned to recognize when he was building a case. Sarah, I think your brother committed intellectual property theft, and if he moves forward with pitching this to investors using your work, we can prove it. The weight of that statement settled over me like a heavy blanket. My own brother had betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way possible, stealing not just ideas but months of my life, my creativity, my hope for the future. But alongside the hurt was something else, something harder and more focused. If Danny wanted to play this game, he'd chosen the wrong opponent. He might know about algorithms and market analysis, but he had no idea he was about to face one of the most skilled patent attorneys on the West Coast. And Marcus didn't just understand intellectual property law, he understood family betrayal on a personal level too. What do we do next? I asked. Marcus's smile was sharp as a blade. We let him hang himself. If Danny is planning to pitch this to investors, he'll need to create a comprehensive presentation. The more he uses your work, the stronger our case becomes. Meanwhile, we document everything and prepare for the fight of his life. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing between hurt and anger. 26 years of sibling relationship was about to become a legal battlefield, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for the collateral damage. But every time I thought about backing down, I remembered the excitement in Danny's voice as he described my innovations as his own, the casual way he'd suggested I help him steal my own future. He'd made his choice at Thanksgiving dinner when he violated my trust and copied my files. Now it was time for him to learn that some betrayals come with a price tag he couldn't afford to pay. Outside our bedroom window, Seattle glittered in the darkness, a city built on innovation and big dreams. Tomorrow, I would begin the fight to reclaim mine. The weeks following our discovery moved with the strange slow-motion quality of watching a car accident unfold. I continued my routine at the marketing firm, designing websites and mobile interfaces for local businesses, but my mind was constantly elsewhere. Every notification on my phone made me jump, wondering if Danny was calling with updates about his stolen project. Marcus threw himself into research mode, spending evenings combing through intellectual property case law and building what he called our nuclear option. The key, he explained one December evening as snow began dusting Seattle's skyline, is letting him commit fully to the theft before we act. Right now, he's accessed your files and discussed similar ideas. Problematic, but not necessarily actionable. We need him to cross the line into active misrepresentation. I was curled up on our couch, laptop balanced on my knees, making minor improvements to MindBridge's user interface. The irony wasn't lost on me that I was still perfecting an app my brother might soon be claiming as his own creation. How do we know he'll actually go through with it? Maybe he was just fishing for ideas and will drop the whole thing. Marcus looked up from his legal pad, where he'd been sketching out potential litigation strategies. Sarah, you know your brother better than I do. Does he typically abandon projects once he's invested time and energy? The question hit home immediately. Danny had never been a quitter, for better or worse. When he decided to learn golf in college, he practiced every day for 2 years until he made the university team. When he set his sights on his current job at the investment firm, he spent months networking and preparing until they offered him a position. Persistence was both his greatest strength and most dangerous weakness. No, he doesn't give up easily. If anything, he gets more determined when things get challenging. Then we wait and document everything. Meanwhile, you should continue developing MindBridge as if nothing has happened. If this goes to court, we want to show consistent innovation and improvement on your part. The waiting was excruciating. I found myself checking Danny's social media obsessively, looking for any hints about his project's progress. His LinkedIn profile remained focused on finance, but I noticed he'd started following several prominent venture capital firms and tech startup accelerators. His Twitter activity shifted toward articles about meditation apps and digital wellness, sharing insights about market opportunities, with the kind of enthusiasm that suggested deep, personal investment. Christmas approached with unusual tension. Our parents had invited both Danny and me to their annual holiday gathering in Portland, a tradition that typically involved too much wine, board games that turned competitive, and Mom's elaborate 7-course dinner that took all day to prepare. This year, the thought of sitting across from Danny while he potentially planned to steal my future made my stomach churn. We should go, Marcus advised when I suggested skipping the celebration entirely. Acting differently might tip him off that we know something. Plus, it gives us a chance to observe his behavior and maybe gather more information. The drive down I-5 to Portland felt longer than usual, gray December landscape blurring past as I mentally rehearsed how to act normal around my brother. Marcus drove while I fidgeted with the radio, unable to settle on any station that matched my restless mood. Remember, Marcus said as we pulled into my parents' familiar driveway, we're just Sarah and Marcus having a nice family Christmas. Nothing has changed. The house looked exactly as it had every December of my childhood, white lights outlining the roofline and a massive Douglas fir visible through the front window. Mom had always gone overboard with holiday decorations, transforming every surface into a winter wonderland that would make department stores jealous. The warm glow from inside promised cinnamon-scented candles and Dad's terrible Christmas music playlist that somehow became more endearing every year. Danny's car was already there, a sleek BMW he'd bought after his latest promotion. He'd always been particular about vehicles, viewing them as extensions of his professional image. The contrast with my modest Honda wasn't lost on me as we gathered our overnight bags and presents from the trunk. "Sarah!" Mom's voice carried across the yard as she emerged from the front door, already wearing the elaborate Christmas sweater that had become her signature holiday look. She enveloped me in a hug that smelled like vanilla and pine, the same combination that had defined Christmas mornings throughout my childhood. "Where's my favorite future lawyer?" She called to Marcus, who was extracting a bottle of wine from our luggage. Mom had taken to Marcus immediately when I first brought him home 2 years ago, appreciating both his dry sense of humor and his obvious devotion to me. Inside, the house buzzed with familiar energy. Dad was in the kitchen, manning multiple pots while Christmas jazz played from the Bluetooth speaker he'd finally learned to operate. Danny stood at the kitchen island, a beer in one hand and his phone in the other, but he looked up with genuine warmth when we entered. "There's my favorite sister," he said, pulling me into a hug that felt exactly like every other Christmas greeting we'd shared. If he felt any guilt about his recent activities, it didn't show in his demeanor. "How's the hermit life treating you?" Danny asked, echoing his phone call from weeks earlier. "Still buried in mysterious app development?" "You know me, always tinkering with something," I replied, proud of how casual I sounded. "How's the finance world? Still making rich people richer?" "Actually, I've been thinking about that career change we discussed. Remember that app idea? I'm getting pretty serious about moving forward with it." My blood pressure spiked, but I managed to keep my expression neutral. "Oh, really? How's that going?" "Better than expected, actually. I've been putting together a comprehensive business plan, and the market opportunity is even bigger than I initially thought. I'm planning to pitch it to some investors early next year." Marcus appeared beside me, offering a glass of wine while maintaining the pleasant expression he wore during difficult depositions. "That sounds exciting, Danny. What kind of app are you developing?" "Mental health and meditation space. There's this huge gap in the market for personalized wellness technology. Everything available now is so generic, just basic timer apps with pre-recorded content. I'm envisioning something that actually adapts to individual users, maybe integrates biometric feedback to create truly customized experiences." Every word felt like a physical blow, but I forced myself to nod encouragingly. "That does sound innovative. Have you done any technical research into feasibility?" "Tons of research. I've been diving deep into the technology stack, user experience design, even some of the medical literature about stress response and meditation effectiveness. It's fascinating stuff." The casual way he claimed my months of research as his own made my hands shake slightly. I took a sip of wine to cover the tremor, grateful when Dad called everyone to dinner and ended the conversation. Christmas dinner proceeded normally on the surface. We discussed Dad's retirement plans, Mom's new pottery hobby, and Marcus's latest case victory. Danny entertained everyone with stories from his office, displaying the charm that had always made him popular with our parents' friends. But underneath the familiar rhythm of family banter, I felt like I was watching a performance, studying my brother for signs of deception while trying not to reveal my own knowledge. "Danny's been telling us about his business venture," Mom said over dessert. "It's so exciting to see you pursuing something you're passionate about, honey." "I've always been interested in wellness and mental health," Danny replied smoothly. "Especially after everything with your anxiety last year, Mom. There's such a need for better tools to help people manage stress and find peace." The manipulation was subtle but effective. Danny had always been skilled at reading what people wanted to hear and reflecting it back to them. Our mother beamed with pride, clearly moved by his apparent concern for her well-being. "Sarah, you should hear some of Danny's ideas," Dad interjected. "This app he's planning sounds right up your alley. Maybe you two could collaborate." The irony was so thick I nearly choked on my wine. "Maybe," I managed. "It definitely sounds like interesting territory." "Actually," Danny said, turning to me with eyes that sparkled with either enthusiasm or calculation, "I'd love to show you some of my preliminary designs sometime. Get your professional opinion on the user experience side. Sure, I heard myself saying. I'd be happy to take a look. After dinner, while our parents cleaned up and Marcus helped Dad with some technical issue involving the television, Danny cornered me in the living room near the Christmas tree. The multicolored lights cast shifting patterns across his face as he pulled out his phone. I wanted to show you something, he said, swiping to what appeared to be a presentation app. I've been working on mock-ups for the meditation platform, and I think you'll appreciate the design philosophy. The screen filled with wireframes that made my heart stop. Not only were they clearly based on MindBridge's interface, but several screens were nearly identical to designs I'd created months earlier. The color palette was different, and some elements had been repositioned, but the core layout and functionality were unmistakably mine. What do you think? Danny asked, studying my reaction carefully. I'm particularly proud of how the biometric integration works. See how the heart rate monitoring appears here in the corner, and stress levels are tracked along this bottom panel? I stared at my own design philosophy reflected back at me through my brother's presentation, feeling simultaneously furious and impressed by his audacity. He'd taken my work and made just enough superficial changes to claim originality, while preserving every innovative element that made MindBridge special. It's very sophisticated, I said carefully. The integration approach is quite advanced for a first-time app developer. I've been studying the space intensively. Amazing what you can learn when you really commit to research. Where did you get inspiration for these specific interface elements? They're quite detailed for conceptual mock-ups. Danny's smile never wavered, but something shifted in his eyes. Oh, bit of everything. Medical journals, existing apps, user experience articles. I've probably absorbed 100 different sources over the past few months. The technical implementation for real-time biometric feedback is pretty complex. Have you connected with any developers yet? That's actually next on my list. I'm hoping to find a team that specializes in health tech and AI integration. Someone who really understands the technical challenges. We were interrupted by Marcus calling my name from the kitchen, but I caught something in Danny's expression as I excused myself. He looked pleased with himself, like someone who just successfully navigated a dangerous conversation. The realization hit me that he'd been testing me, gauging whether I recognized my own work in his presentation. Everything okay? Marcus asked quietly when I joined him near the coffee maker. He showed me the mock-ups. Marcus, they're my designs. Not similar, not inspired by, literally my exact interface with cosmetic changes. Marcus's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. How confident are you in that assessment? Completely. I spent weeks perfecting those specific layouts. The biometric integration display, the stress level visualization, even the menu structure. He's taken screenshots of my work and changed the colors. Then we have him, Marcus said simply. If he's using your exact designs in investor presentations, that's copyright infringement at minimum. Potentially trade secret theft, depending on how we frame it. The rest of Christmas weekend passed in a surreal haze. Danny continued discussing his project with enthusiastic detail, clearly enjoying the family's support and encouragement. He mentioned timeline goals, funding targets, and team-building plans with the confidence of someone who believed his theft would never be discovered. Meanwhile, Marcus and I maintained perfect composure while mentally cataloging every incriminating statement. When Danny mentioned his January timeline for investor meetings, Marcus made a note on his phone. When he discussed hiring developers to build his app, I memorized the specific features he planned to request. Sunday morning, as we packed our bags for the drive back to Seattle, Danny pulled me aside one final time. Sarah, I want you to know how much your support means to me. This project represents a complete career pivot, and it's terrifying to leave behind everything I've built in finance. But I really believe this app could help people. The sincerity in his voice was almost convincing. If I hadn't known about the theft, I might have been moved by his apparent vulnerability and desire to make a positive impact. Instead, I felt disgusted by the ease with which he lied while looking directly into my eyes. I hope it works out for you, Danny. I really do. Maybe once I get funding and start building the team, you'd consider joining the project officially. I know you're happy at your current job, but this could be something special. The Whitman siblings disrupting Silicon Valley together. The offer hung between us like a trap. He was asking me to help him steal my own creation, to become complicit in my own betrayal. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. Let's see how things develop, I said. Early-stage projects can be unpredictable. The drive back to Seattle was quiet. Both Marcus and I lost in our own thoughts. The holiday weekend had provided exactly the evidence we'd hoped for, but it had also made the betrayal feel more real and more personal. This wasn't just intellectual property theft anymore. This was my brother deliberately destroying my trust while asking for my support in the process. What happens next? I asked as we crossed the Washington state line. Now we wait for him to make his move. Based on what he told your parents, he's planning investor presentations in January. Once he formally pitches your work as his own to potential funders, we'll have everything we need for a devastating lawsuit. And until then, you keep developing MindBridge. Make improvements, document everything, establish an even stronger paper trail of innovation. When this goes public, we want the contrast to be unmistakable. You're the genuine innovator continuing to push boundaries while he's presenting static mock-ups he stole months ago. Back in our apartment, I threw myself into MindBridge development with renewed intensity. Every evening after work, every weekend, every spare moment was dedicated to enhancing features, refining algorithms, and expanding functionality. The app became my refuge from the emotional turmoil of waiting for Danny's next move. Marcus helped me implement more sophisticated logging systems to track every change and improvement. We created detailed documentation of my development process, time-stamped videos of features in action, and comprehensive technical specifications that would prove impossible for Danny to replicate without access to my source code. If this goes to court, Marcus explained, we want to demonstrate not just that you created the original work, but that you've continued innovating while he's been stuck with a static copy. Real inventors iterate and improve. Thieves just present what they've stolen. January arrived with unusual snow for Seattle, blanketing the city in pristine white that made everything look clean and hopeful. I was debugging a particularly complex algorithm when my phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Big news! Just confirmed my first investor presentation for next week. Wish me luck. I stared at the message for a long moment, then showed it to Marcus. It's starting, he said simply. That night, I had trouble sleeping. Tomorrow would begin the final phase of our plan, the period where Danny would either back down or commit himself so completely to the theft that there would be no path back to family reconciliation. I'd spent weeks hoping he might somehow realize what he was doing and stop, but his text message made it clear he was moving forward without hesitation. By morning, I'd made peace with what had to happen next. Danny had chosen his path, and now Marcus and I would show him exactly what it cost to steal from someone who refused to be a victim. The war was about to begin, and my brother had no idea he'd already lost. The notification came at 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, a LinkedIn update that made my stomach drop. Danny had changed his profile headline to Founder and CEO at Mindflow Technologies, revolutionizing digital wellness through personalized meditation. Below that, a new post with over 200 likes already. Excited to announce that I'll be presenting Mindflow to leading VCs next week. After months of development, we're ready to transform how people approach mental health and mindfulness. The future of wellness technology starts now. I screenshot the post immediately, my hands trembling slightly as I saved it to the evidence folder Marcus and I had been building. The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had Danny stolen my concept and designs, but he'd even appropriated a variation of my app's name. MindBridge had become Mindflow, as if changing one word somehow legitimized the theft. Marcus was already asleep beside me, but I gently shook his shoulder. He stirred immediately, instantly alert in the way that came from years of handling legal emergencies. He posted about it publicly, I whispered, showing him my phone screen. LinkedIn announcement about investor presentations next week. Marcus sat up, reading the post carefully, while his legal mind processed the implications. This is perfect, actually. Public statements about ownership and development create a paper trail we can use. He's essentially broadcasting his false claims to thousands of people. Look at the comments, I said, scrolling down. People congratulating him on his innovation, asking about the technology. He's responding to questions about features I developed, acting like he understands the technical implementation. One comment in particular stood out, from a former colleague at his investment firm. Always knew you had an entrepreneurial streak. The biometric integration concept sounds groundbreaking. When did you start developing this? Danny's response was swift and confident. I've been passionate about this space for over a year, diving deep into the research and technical development. It's amazing what you can accomplish when you find your true calling. Over a year. He was claiming my entire development timeline as his own, rewriting history to position himself as the visionary behind innovations I'd spent countless nights perfecting. The casual dishonesty was stunning, made worse by the enthusiastic responses from people who believed they were witnessing genuine innovation. We need to start monitoring everything, Marcus said, fully awake now and shifting into attorney mode. Social media posts, press coverage, any public statements he makes about the technology. If he's this brazen about false claims online, imagine what he'll say in investor meetings. Over the next few days, I watched Danny's online presence transform. His social media feeds filled with articles about meditation app market trends, posts about the importance of mental health technology, and thoughtful commentary on digital wellness innovation. He was crafting a public persona as a thought leader in exactly the space I'd been working in for over a year. The most infuriating part was how naturally it seemed to come to him. Danny had always been charismatic, able to speak confidently about topics he'd just learned. In college, he'd been the guy who could charm professors during oral exams, even when he hadn't done the reading. Now he was applying that same skill to discussing my life's work, as if he'd conceived every element himself. I've been thinking about user experience psychology and how traditional meditation apps fail to account for individual stress response patterns. He posted on Twitter, accompanied by a thread of insights that read like a summary of my research notes. The thread gained hundreds of retweets and responses from people impressed by his apparent expertise. Marcus and I spent our evenings documenting every public statement, creating a comprehensive timeline that contrasted Danny's claims with the actual development history we could prove. My file creation dates, backup logs, and version control history painted a clear picture of genuine innovation happening while Danny was still posting about quarterly earnings reports and investment strategies. Look at this, I said one evening, showing Marcus a particularly egregious example. Danny had shared an article about biometric feedback in wellness applications, adding his own commentary about the technical challenges involved in real-time heart rate variability analysis. His insights were sophisticated and accurate, clearly drawn from research I'd done months earlier. He's not just stealing your work, Marcus observed. He's stealing your expertise. This level of technical understanding doesn't develop overnight, especially for someone with a finance background. The worst part is that he's good at it. Look at the engagement on these posts. People are genuinely impressed by his knowledge and vision. That's exactly why this case will be so satisfying to win, Marcus replied with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The more successful he becomes using your work, the more devastating our evidence will be. He's building his entire new identity around stolen innovation. The weekend brought news that made my blood pressure spike. Danny's LinkedIn post about securing his first investor meeting had attracted attention from TechCrunch, who reached out for a preliminary interview about his transition from finance to tech entrepreneurship. The resulting article, published Sunday morning, featured Danny prominently as an example of successful career pivoting in the startup world. Former investment manager develops revolutionary meditation app, read the headline. Above a professional photo of Danny in a casual button-down shirt, looking every inch the visionary founder. The article praised his unique background in both finance and wellness, describing Mindflow as a sophisticated platform that promises to revolutionize personalized meditation through advanced biometric integration. Danny was quoted extensively throughout the piece, discussing market opportunities, technical innovations, and his personal motivation for entering the mental health space. I realized that existing meditation apps treat every user identically, despite the fact that stress response and relaxation needs vary dramatically between individuals, he told the reporter. MindFlow represents a fundamental shift toward truly personalized wellness technology. Every word in that quote came directly from a presentation I'd given to Marcus months earlier, when I was explaining the core value proposition behind MindBridge. Danny had somehow absorbed not just my technical work, but my entire philosophical approach to the problem space. This is actually good news, Marcus said when I showed him the article, though my hands were shaking with rage. The more public attention he attracts, the more humiliating his downfall will be. And look here, he's making specific technical claims about the app's capabilities. When we reveal that he has no functional prototype, these statements become evidence of fraud. He's quoted talking about beta testing and user feedback. Marcus, I don't think he has any users at all. How can he claim to have test data for an app that doesn't exist? That's exactly the kind of overreach we want him to make. Keep screenshots of everything. Every false claim, every technical detail he couldn't possibly know without access to your work, every timeline inconsistency. Monday morning brought an email that changed everything. My work inbox contained a message from Jennifer Walsh, a senior partner at Cascade Ventures, one of Seattle's most prominent VC firms. The subject line read, Innovative Meditation Technology Inquiry. Dear Sarah, the email began, I hope this message finds you well. I came across your LinkedIn profile while researching the digital wellness space, and I'm impressed by your background in UX design and technology development. We're currently evaluating investment opportunities in personalized mental health applications, and I'd love to discuss your perspective on market trends and technical feasibility. Would you be available for a brief call this week to share your insights? My first instinct was confusion. I'd never reached out to VCs about MindBridge, and my LinkedIn profile didn't explicitly mention meditation app development. Then I realized what must have happened. Jennifer had probably seen the TechCrunch article about Danny and decided to do background research on the meditation app space. My profile, with its focus on health technology UX design, had appeared in her searches as someone knowledgeable about the field. This is incredible, Marcus said when I forwarded him the email. She's essentially asking you to consult on evaluating your brother's stolen work. It's like the universe is handing us the perfect opportunity. But what do I say? I can't just tell her that the founder she's researching stole his entire concept from me. Actually, you can. But more importantly, you can show her. Take the meeting, Sarah. Demonstrate your actual working prototype, your technical expertise, your genuine understanding of the problem space. Let her draw her own conclusions about who the real innovator is. That afternoon, I called Jennifer back. Her voice was warm and professional, with the kind of confident energy that came from years of evaluating ambitious entrepreneurs and their bold claims. We scheduled a meeting for Thursday morning at Cascade's downtown offices, ostensibly for me to provide industry insights as an independent expert. I'm particularly interested in your thoughts on biometric integration approaches, Jennifer mentioned as we wrapped up the call. There's a company called MindFlow that's making some impressive technical claims in this area, and I'd love your perspective on feasibility. My heart raced, but I kept my voice steady. I'd be happy to discuss the technical challenges and opportunities in that space. I've done quite a bit of research into biometric feedback applications. Wednesday night, Marcus and I spent hours preparing for the meeting. We organized my laptop to showcase MindBridge's actual functionality, prepared documentation of my development timeline, and rehearsed how to present the information objectively without immediately accusing Danny of theft. The key, Marcus explained, is to let your expertise speak for itself. Show her what real innovation looks like, demonstrate actual working technology, and answer her technical questions with the kind of deep knowledge that only comes from genuine development experience. If she's as sharp as her reputation suggests, she'll recognize the difference between authentic innovation and stolen concepts. What if she doesn't believe me? What if she thinks I'm the one lying? Sarah, you have a working prototype that you can demonstrate in real time. You have file creation timestamps, development logs, and technical documentation going back over a year. Danny has mock-ups and borrowed expertise. Trust the evidence. Thursday morning dawned crisp and clear, Seattle's skyline sharp against a brilliant blue sky. I dressed carefully in my best professional outfit, a navy blazer and tailored pants that Marcus said made me look like someone who belonged in venture capital boardrooms. My laptop bag contained not just my computer but printed documentation, backup drives, and the kind of comprehensive technical portfolio that only someone who'd built the technology from scratch could provide. Cascade Ventures occupied the top 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains. The reception area buzzed with the kind of controlled energy that came from dealing in million-dollar decisions and companies that could change the world. Jennifer Walsh appeared precisely on time, a woman in her mid-40s with silver-streaked hair and the kind of sharp, intelligent eyes that suggested she didn't miss much. Her handshake was firm, her smile genuine, and her overall presence radiated the confidence of someone who'd built a career on identifying exceptional opportunities. "Sarah, thank you so much for coming in. I know your time is valuable, and I really appreciate your willingness to share your expertise with us." She led me to a spacious conference room with a wall-mounted display and a polished table that reflected the city views. Coffee appeared immediately, along with the kind of high-end pastries that suggested Cascade took their meetings seriously. As I mentioned on the phone, we're evaluating opportunities in the digital wellness space, particularly applications that go beyond basic meditation timers to offer truly personalized experiences, Jennifer began, settling into her chair with a legal pad and pen. Your background suggests you understand both the technical and user experience challenges in this area. I've spent considerable time researching the intersection of biometric feedback and mental health applications, I replied carefully. It's a fascinating space with enormous potential, but also significant technical hurdles that many people underestimate. Can you elaborate on those technical challenges? We're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs making bold claims about real-time stress monitoring and adaptive meditation experiences. But I'm curious about the actual implementation complexity. This was exactly the kind of question that separated genuine expertise from surface-level knowledge. I spent the next 20 minutes walking Jennifer through the technical architecture required for effective biometric integration, discussing sampling rates, signal processing challenges, machine learning model training, and the user experience design principles needed to make complex technology feel simple and intuitive. Jennifer took detailed notes, asking follow-up questions that demonstrated both her intelligence and her genuine interest in understanding the technology. As our conversation deepened, I could see her forming opinions about what real expertise looked like versus what she'd probably encountered in other pitches. "This is incredibly helpful," she said after I finished explaining the challenges of real-time heart rate variability analysis. "I have to say, your understanding of these issues is more sophisticated than most of the entrepreneurs we see in this space. Have you considered developing applications in this area yourself?" The question hung in the air like an invitation. This was the moment Marcus and I had prepared for, the opportunity to reveal the truth in a way that would be impossible to ignore. "Actually," I said, reaching for my laptop, "I have been working on something. Would you like to see it?" Jennifer's eyes lit up with genuine interest. "Absolutely." I opened my laptop and launched MindBridge, the familiar interface appearing on the conference room's large display. The app loaded smoothly, showing the clean, intuitive design I'd spent months perfecting. Real-time heart rate data appeared in the corner, stress level indicators updated dynamically, and the meditation content adapted automatically based on biometric feedback. "This is a fully functional prototype," I explained, navigating through features that demonstrated genuine technical sophistication. It integrates with multiple biometric sensors, uses machine learning to adapt to individual stress patterns, and provides personalized meditation experiences that evolve based on user response data. Quote, Jennifer leaned forward, studying the display intently. "This is remarkable. The technical implementation is exactly what you described in theory but actually working. How long have you been developing this?" "About 18 months of intensive development, with research and planning starting almost 2 years ago." "And you built this yourself?" "The core architecture and algorithms, yes. I've done some consulting with specialists for particular components, but the fundamental innovation and implementation is my work." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment, clearly processing what she was seeing. Sarah, this is the most sophisticated meditation technology I've encountered. The biometric integration is seamless, the user experience is intuitive, and the underlying technical architecture is genuinely innovative. Why aren't you pitching this to investors yourself? Before I could answer, she continued with a question that made my pulse race. I have to ask, have you seen the coverage of a company called Mindflow? They're making claims about very similar functionality, and I'm curious about your thoughts on their approach. This was it. The moment where I could either reveal the truth or continue pretending to be just an independent expert. I looked at the conference room display showing my actual working technology, then at Jennifer's intelligent, expectant face. I've seen their coverage, I said carefully. What specific aspects would you like me to comment on? Jennifer pulled out her tablet and navigated to the TechCrunch article about Danny. Their founder claims to have developed revolutionary biometric integration technology for personalized meditation. Based on your expertise, how do their claims compare to what you've just shown me? I studied the article, even though I'd already memorized every word. Danny's photo smiled back at me, positioned as the innovative founder of technology I was currently demonstrating in working form. That's my brother, I said quietly. Jennifer's expression shifted immediately, confusion replacing curiosity. I'm sorry, what? Danny Whitman is my brother. And the technology he's claiming to have developed is based on work he stole from me. The silence in the conference room was absolute. Jennifer stared at me, then at the display showing MindBridge still running smoothly, then back at me. Are you telling me that your brother took your work and is presenting it as his own innovation? That's exactly what I'm telling you. And I can prove it. Over the next hour, I walked Jennifer through the entire story. The file access logs from Thanksgiving, the technical documentation proving my development timeline, the comparison between Danny's public claims and my actual working prototype. I showed her the timestamps that established when I'd created each feature, the version control history that demonstrated genuine iterative development, and the stark contrast between someone who'd built technology from scratch and someone presenting stolen mock-ups. Jennifer listened without interruption, taking detailed notes and occasionally asking for clarification on technical details. Her expression grew more serious as the evidence mounted, the professional composure giving way to something that looked like anger. This is intellectual property theft on a massive scale, she said finally. Your brother isn't just stealing your work, he's building his entire new career identity around it. And he's doing it publicly, in ways that could attract significant investment. That's exactly what he's planning. He has investor meetings scheduled for next week. Sarah, I need to ask you directly, are you planning to take legal action over this theft? I looked at her across the polished conference table. This successful woman who'd built her career on identifying authentic innovation and supporting genuine entrepreneurs. The question deserved a straight answer. My husband is a patent attorney. We've been building a case that will not only stop Danny from profiting from my work, but establish clear legal precedent about intellectual property theft in the startup world. When we're finished, he won't just lose the opportunity to pitch my technology. He'll lose his reputation, his credibility, and potentially face criminal charges for fraud. Jennifer nodded slowly. Good? Because what he's doing isn't just theft from you personally. It's fraud against every investor he approaches, every reporter who covers his story, and every potential user who might eventually pay for technology he didn't create. She closed her legal pad and looked directly at me. Sarah, I want to make you an offer. Cascade Ventures would be very interested in discussing investment in MindBridge, assuming you're interested in pursuing funding. What your brother is attempting to steal is genuinely innovative technology with enormous market potential. You should be the one benefiting from your own innovations. The offer hung in the air like a life preserver thrown to someone who'd been drowning. After months of watching Danny steal credit for my work, someone was finally recognizing the real creator and offering the support I'd always hoped to find. I'd be very interested in that conversation, I managed. Excellent. I'd like to schedule a formal pitch meeting for next week, assuming you're available. And Sarah, I want you to know that Cascade Ventures takes intellectual property theft very seriously. If your brother approaches us or any firm in our network with stolen technology, we'll make sure the entire investment community knows exactly what kind of person they'd be dealing with. As I packed up my laptop and prepared to leave, Jennifer asked one final question. When you take legal action against your brother, will you go public with the case? I thought about Danny's confident social media posts, his TechCrunch interview, his plans to pitch my stolen work to investors across the city. He'd chosen to make his theft public, to build his new identity around stolen innovation. Yes, I said. He made this public when he decided to steal my work and claim credit for it. Now he gets to face the consequences publicly too. The war began at 6:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, with a single tweet that would eventually destroy my brother's entire fabricated world. Marcus had spent weeks crafting the message, each word chosen for maximum legal and public relations impact. He showed me the draft over coffee, both of us knowing that once he hit send, there would be no turning back. Disappointed to learn that Mindflow Technologies founder Danny Whitman is presenting stolen IP as his own innovation. My client has extensive documentation proving original development of this technology, including timestamps, source code, and filed patents. Investors should demand proof of authentic development before funding IP theft. The tweet included screenshots of file creation dates, a side-by-side comparison of Danny's mock-ups with my original designs, and a link to a legal notice Marcus had posted on his firm's website. Within minutes, the tech community began sharing and commenting, and by the time I arrived at work that morning, #MindflowHeft was trending. My phone buzzed constantly throughout the day with notifications, messages, and calls from reporters who'd picked up the story. Marcus had prepared me for the media attention, but experiencing it firsthand was overwhelming. Every few minutes brought a new development, as journalists investigated the claims and found increasingly damaging evidence supporting our position. The Seattle Tech Tribune published a detailed analysis by noon, comparing the technical sophistication of my working prototype with Danny's static presentations. One founder demonstrates functional biometric integration with real-time adaptivity, their tech reporter wrote, while the other shows mock-ups that appear to be screenshots with altered colors. The contrast raises serious questions about authentic innovation versus sophisticated theft. By evening, 3 more major tech publications had covered the story, each finding new angles that made Danny's situation worse. Wired focused on the family betrayal aspect, interviewing experts about trust violation in startup environments. Forbes analyzed the financial implications for investors who might unknowingly fund stolen technology. TechCrunch, which had originally featured Danny as an innovative career changer, published a follow-up piece with the brutal headline, "When Disruption Becomes Deception, the Mindflow Scandal." Danny's response came at 8:47 p.m., a panicked series of social media posts that Marcus immediately screenshot for evidence. These allegations are completely false and represent a misunderstanding of independent development processes, his first tweet claimed. Mindflow technology represents months of original research and innovation. I will be addressing these baseless attacks through proper legal channels. But the follow-up posts revealed his desperation. He began sharing time-stamped documents that actually supported our case, including research notes that contained verbatim quotes from my development journals. Most damaging was a technical explanation he posted to defend his expertise, which included algorithmic details he could only have known by accessing my source code. "He's making this too easy," Marcus observed as we monitored the unfolding disaster from our living room. "Every attempt to defend himself provides more evidence of the theft. Look at this post where he explains the heart rate variability processing algorithm. Those are your exact calculations, down to the specific mathematical constants you derived through testing." The investor community's reaction was swift and brutal. By Wednesday morning, Danny's scheduled pitch meetings began canceling. The venture capital firms weren't just declining to meet with him, they were publicly distancing themselves from what one partner called potentially fraudulent misrepresentation of intellectual property ownership. Jennifer Walsh from Cascade Ventures became our unofficial spokesperson in the investment world, sharing her experience of seeing both my working prototype and Danny's stolen presentations. Her LinkedIn post about the meeting went viral within the tech community. Recently met with both the real innovator and the alleged thief in the Mindflow controversy. The difference between authentic expertise and borrowed claims was immediately obvious. Investors must do better due diligence to prevent funding IP theft. Thursday brought the development I'd been both anticipating and dreading. Danny called me directly for the first time since the story broke, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Sarah, we need to talk. This situation has gotten completely out of hand, and I think there are some serious misunderstandings that we can clear up." "What exactly do you think is misunderstood?" I asked, proud of how calm I sounded despite my racing heart. "Look, I know there are similarities between our projects, but that's just natural convergent thinking in an emerging market space. Great minds think alike, right? We both saw the same opportunity and approached it from our different expertise areas." The audacity was breathtaking. Even with overwhelming evidence of theft, he was still trying to frame this as coincidental parallel development. "Danny, you accessed my files on Thanksgiving. We have server logs proving when you opened my research documents, my code repository, and my design files. This isn't convergent thinking. This is theft." "That's not what happened. I may have glanced at your laptop when it was open, just out of curiosity about what my sister was working on. Any similarities are purely coincidental. So you coincidentally developed identical user interface layouts, identical algorithmic approaches, and identical technical architecture? And you coincidentally decided to name your company something almost identical to my app? Sarah, please. We're family. Can't we work this out privately? I'm willing to acknowledge your contributions to the market research, and maybe even offer you a consulting role on the project." The offer to consult on my own stolen work was so insulting that I almost hung up immediately. Instead, I took a deep breath and delivered the response Marcus and I had prepared. "Danny, you stole 18 months of my life's work and tried to build a career on my innovations. You lied to our parents, to investors, to reporters, and to the entire tech community about your role in developing this technology. There's nothing to work out privately. You made this public when you decided to pitch my work as your own. If you don't drop this immediately, I'll have no choice but to pursue legal action against you for defamation and interference with business relationships." The threat was exactly what Marcus had predicted Danny would try, and we'd prepared for this moment. "You're welcome to try," I said. "My husband is one of the best intellectual property attorneys on the West Coast, and we have documentation that will destroy any case you attempt to bring. But more importantly, Danny, every threat you make gets recorded and becomes evidence of your attempts to cover up the theft through intimidation. Your husband, Sarah, Marcus works in corporate law, not whatever this patent stuff is about." The comment revealed how little Danny actually knew about the man who was systematically destroying his fabricated career. "Marcus specializes in intellectual property litigation, Danny. He spent the last month building a case against you that includes not just the original theft but fraud, copyright infringement, and now attempted intimidation of a witness." The silence on the other end of the call lasted so long that I wondered if he'd hung up. When Danny finally spoke, his voice had changed completely, the confident charm replaced by something much smaller and more desperate. "What do you want? Money? I'll split any funding 50-50. We can be partners, like we talked about when we were kids. I want you to publicly acknowledge that you stole my work, apologize for the deception, and permanently withdraw from any involvement in meditation technology development. And Danny, I want you to understand that this isn't about money. This is about the fact that you tried to steal my identity as an innovator and build your new life on my creativity. I can't do that. It would destroy my reputation, my career prospects, everything I've worked toward. You should have thought about that before you decided to steal from your own sister." I hung up and immediately called Marcus to report the conversation. He was pleased with Danny's threats, explaining that they strengthened our legal position, while demonstrating his awareness of the theft. "The best part is that he admitted accessing your laptop," Marcus noted. "Even if he claims it was casual curiosity, he's acknowledged that he saw your work before developing his supposedly independent project." Friday morning brought news that made the entire week worthwhile. The FBI's white-collar crime unit had opened an investigation into Danny's activities based on complaints from potential investors who felt they'd been defrauded by his misrepresentations. What had started as a civil intellectual property dispute was now a potential federal criminal case. "This is bigger than we anticipated," Marcus explained over breakfast. "When someone uses stolen IP to solicit investment funding, it becomes wire fraud. The penalties aren't just financial anymore, they include potential prison time." The gravity of the situation hit me then. Danny wasn't just facing professional embarrassment or financial consequences. He was potentially looking at criminal charges that could result in years in federal prison. The brother who'd taught me to ride a bike and defended me from playground bullies was now the subject of a federal investigation. "Are you having second thoughts?" Marcus asked, reading my expression. "Part of me is. He's still my brother, despite everything he's done. But then I think about how he looked me in the eye at Christmas and asked for my help stealing my own work. How he was willing to destroy my future to build his own." Sarah, what Danny did wasn't a moment of weakness or poor judgment. This was systematic, deliberate, and ongoing theft. He had multiple opportunities to stop, and instead he escalated by going public and trying to attract investment funding. That weekend, Danny made one final attempt to control the narrative. He published a long Medium post titled, "The Truth About Innovation, Family, and False Accusations," attempting to frame himself as the victim of a vindictive family dispute. The post was professionally written, clearly crafted with help from a crisis communications firm he'd hired to manage the scandal. Like many entrepreneurs, I found inspiration from various sources, including conversations with family members who share my passion for technology and wellness, he wrote. "The recent allegations against me represent a fundamental misunderstanding of how innovation works in collaborative environments. Ideas evolve through discussion, research, and shared exploration of emerging opportunities." He went on to describe our family dinners, where technology and startup ideas were supposedly discussed openly, portraying himself as someone who'd simply been inspired by family conversations rather than someone who'd committed deliberate theft. The post included carefully selected screenshots of our text conversations, edited to remove context and make it appear that I'd been actively collaborating on his project. The response from the tech community was immediate and brutal. Within hours, dozens of industry leaders, investors, and fellow entrepreneurs had published responses pointing out the flaws in Danny's defense. Several prominent founders shared their own experiences with family members who'd tried to claim credit for their work, creating a wave of support for my position. Most devastating was a detailed technical analysis published by Dr. Jennifer Chen, a computer science professor at the University of Washington who specialized in biometric integration systems. She'd obtained copies of both my working prototype and Danny's presentations, conducting a line-by-line comparison of the technical approaches. "The alleged independent development is technically impossible," Dr. Chen wrote in her analysis. "The algorithmic approaches, mathematical constants, and architectural decisions are identical down to variable naming conventions and code comments. This level of similarity cannot occur through parallel development, even among family members discussing similar problems." Her post included side-by-side code comparisons that made Danny's theft undeniable, even to people without technical backgrounds. The variable names I'd chosen for specific functions appeared identically in Danny's documentation. Comments I'd written to explain complex algorithmic decisions were reproduced verbatim in his technical specifications. Sunday evening, as Marcus and I prepared for what we knew would be a decisive week, my phone rang with a call from my parents. I'd been dreading this conversation since the story broke, knowing they'd eventually want to understand what was happening between their children. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk about what's going on with you and Danny." Mom's voice carried the careful tone she used when trying to navigate family conflicts without taking sides. "What specifically do you want to discuss?" "All this business about stolen technology and legal cases. Danny says it's a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion by social media. He's really upset about the damage to his reputation." "Mom, Danny stole 18 months of my work and tried to use it to build a new career. This isn't a misunderstanding or a family squabble. This is intellectual property theft." "But, sweetheart, you're both working on similar things. Isn't it possible that you just had similar ideas? You grew up in the same house, with the same influences." The conversation revealed exactly what I'd feared. Danny had gotten to our parents first, framing the situation as a family dispute rather than criminal theft. His version of events positioned him as the victim of an overreaction, while I was the vindictive sister who'd chosen public humiliation over private resolution. Mom, I have proof. File access logs showing when he opened my research documents on Thanksgiving. Timestamps proving I developed this technology over a year before he claims to have started his project. Technical evidence showing he copied my code, my designs, and even my business strategy. Danny says he can explain all of that. He says there are innocent explanations for everything, and that you're interpreting normal family interactions as something sinister. What does Dad think? There was a pause before Dad's voice came on the line. Sarah, I think you kids need to work this out between yourselves. Family shouldn't be airing their problems in public like this. It reflects poorly on all of us. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with my parents alternating between concern for both their children and clear preference for Danny's version of events. They wanted me to drop the legal case, issue a public statement about misunderstandings, and work toward private reconciliation that would restore family harmony. I can't do that, I told them finally. Danny didn't just steal from me personally. He defrauded investors, lied to reporters, and tried to build his entire new career on my innovations. This is bigger than family dynamics now. Sarah, he's your brother, Mom said, her voice breaking slightly. Doesn't that mean anything to you? It meant everything to me, Mom. That's why this hurt so much. Danny knew exactly how much damage he was doing when he decided to steal my work, and he did it anyway. After the call ended, I sat in our living room staring out at Seattle's twinkling skyline, processing the reality that this legal battle would likely cost me my relationship with my parents as well as my brother. She was also trying to frame our encounter as progress and making me responsible for maintaining whatever connection she thought we'd established. I screenshotted the text and forwarded it to Marcus, then blocked the number. Within minutes, my phone rang. That's evidence of continued harassment, Marcus said without preamble. Forward that to Officer Rodriguez. Already done. Good. How are you feeling? Like, I've been reminded why I made the choices I made. She can't help herself, Marcus. Even when she's supposedly in therapy, even when she's facing legal consequences, she can't stop trying to manipulate and control. I'm sorry, Izzy. I know part of you was hoping she'd really changed. Yeah, well, I guess hope isn't always a good thing. Hope is always a good thing, Marcus corrected gently, but hope has to be balanced with wisdom and self-protection. You hoped she'd changed, but you also protected yourself and Sophia by maintaining boundaries. That's exactly what you should have done. That evening, Eleanor called to check on me. I told her about the day's revelations, including Catherine's text message. Oh, honey, Eleanor said with a sigh. I'm sorry she disappointed you again. I should have known better. No, you should have hoped for better while protecting yourself from the worst. And that's exactly what you did. You didn't drop your guard or let her back into your life based on one conversation. You maintained your boundaries while still being open to the possibility of change. That shows wisdom, not naivete. It just hurts, you know? Every time I think maybe she could be the mother I need, she proves that she can't. I know it hurts, but I want you to remember something. The mother you need isn't necessarily the one who gave birth to you. The mother you need is someone who sees your worth, celebrates your happiness, supports your choices, and puts your well-being above their own ego. You've become that mother for Sophia, and you have people in your life who mother you in return. As if to prove Eleanor's point, she showed up at our door the next morning with homemade muffins and offered to watch Sophia while I went to the gym. Later that day, Marcus surprised me by coming home early with takeout from my favorite restaurant. When our eyes met across the courtroom, I saw not the charming brother who'd once taught me card tricks, but the calculating stranger who'd stolen my identity as an innovator and tried to build his fortune on my creativity. Judge Patricia Morrison called the proceedings to order with the sharp authority of someone who'd presided over decades of complex intellectual property disputes. She'd reviewed our preliminary filings and expressed particular interest in what her clerk had described as the most comprehensive documentation of startup-related IP theft in federal court history. Marcus rose for our opening statement, his voice carrying the quiet confidence that had made him one of Seattle's most feared litigation attorneys. Your Honor, This case represents more than simple intellectual property theft. The defendant systematically stole his sister's innovations, then used those stolen assets to defraud investors, deceive the media, and attempt to build a technology company based entirely on someone else's creativity. He clicked a remote, and the courtroom's large display filled with side-by-side comparisons of my original MindBridge interfaces and Danny's copied MindFlow presentations. The similarities were so obvious that several jury members leaned forward to study the details more closely. The evidence will show that Daniel Whitman accessed his sister's private files during a family gathering, copied her proprietary research, stole her source code, and then spent months presenting this stolen work as his own innovation to venture capitalists, journalists, and potential business partners. Marcus walked the jury through our timeline, starting with my original development work and continuing through Danny's systematic theft and public deception. Each piece of evidence built on the previous one, creating an unshakable foundation that made Danny's defense look increasingly desperate. Danny's lead attorney, a sharp-suited partner from one of Seattle's most prestigious firms, attempted to counter with the convergent innovation defense they'd been developing for weeks. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. When brilliant minds tackle similar problems, they often arrive at similar solutions through independent research and development. But every argument they made crumbled against the technical evidence Marcus presented. The file access logs from Thanksgiving showed exactly when Danny had opened my proprietary documents. The code analysis revealed identical variable names, comment structures, and algorithmic approaches that couldn't possibly result from parallel development. Most damaging were the emails Danny had sent to potential investors, describing technical capabilities that he could only have known by studying my actual working prototype. Dr. Jennifer Chen took the stand as our expert witness, her academic credentials and technical expertise lending unassailable credibility to our case. She walked the jury through her analysis of both applications, explaining in clear terms why the level of similarity between my work and Danny's presentations could only result from direct copying. In 20 years of studying software development and innovation patterns, I have never encountered two independently developed applications with this degree of identical implementation, Dr. Chen testified. The defendant's code doesn't just solve the same problems as the plaintiff's work, it solves them using identical methods, identical mathematical constants, and identical architectural decisions. This is not convergent innovation. This is theft. Danny's cross-examination of Dr. Chen backfired spectacularly when he attempted to demonstrate his own technical expertise by questioning her analysis. His lawyers had clearly coached him to appear knowledgeable about the technology, but his questions revealed the superficial understanding of someone who'd borrowed expertise rather than developed it through genuine research. Mr. Whitman, Dr. Chen responded to one particularly misguided question about algorithm optimization. Your question suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of how machine learning models process biometric data. If you'd actually developed this technology, you would know that the approach you're describing would result in completely unreliable stress level calculations. The courtroom stirred as Danny's face flushed red, his attempted display of expertise exposed as borrowed knowledge he didn't truly understand. His lawyers quickly moved to redirect, but the damage was done. The jury had seen the difference between authentic innovation and stolen concepts. Jennifer Walsh from Cascade Ventures testified about her meetings with both Danny and me, describing the stark contrast between someone presenting stolen mock-ups and someone demonstrating actual working technology. We had temporary custody orders that gave me sole legal and physical custody pending resolution of the criminal case. And we had assurances from multiple levels of military authority that any attempts to use social connections to interfere with the investigation would be treated as criminal conspiracy. Rebecca, my father said as we finally prepared to get some sleep, I want you to understand what's going to happen over the next few weeks. Margaret Prescott is going to trial for attempted murder, and her defense is going to focus on portraying you as an unstable mother who fabricated the whole story. Marcus is going to face his own criminal charges for intimidation and obstruction of justice. There are going to be news stories, social media campaigns, and attempts to destroy your reputation. I looked toward the bedroom where Sophia was sleeping peacefully in her borrowed crib, unaware that her entire world had been turned upside down by the adults who were supposed to protect her. But here's what they don't understand, my father continued. They're not fighting just you anymore. They're fighting the entire military justice system, and people who've spent their careers dealing with threats to military families. Margaret Prescott may know how to manipulate Navy wives' social groups, but she doesn't know how to fight federal prosecutors who specialize in child endangerment cases. Captain Chen looked up from her laptop, where she'd been documenting the evening's events. Rebecca, I want you to know that you've done everything right. You protected your daughter, you cooperated with the investigation, and you refused to be intimidated into silence. Sophia is safe now, and she's going to stay safe. As I finally settled into bed that night, with Sophia sleeping beside me and security cameras monitoring every entrance to our temporary home, I felt something I hadn't experienced since this nightmare began. Genuine hope that justice would be served. My father's network was mobilizing, Captain Chen's legal expertise was protecting us, and for the first time since Marcus had chosen his mother over his daughter's safety, I felt like we had allies who understood what was really at stake. Margaret Prescott had spent decades building influence in her small corner of military society, but she'd made the mistake of targeting the granddaughter of a 4-star admiral who'd spent 30 years building relationships that mattered on a national level. Marcus's cross-examination was surgical in its precision, dismantling Danny's defense through a series of questions that revealed the extent of his deception. Mr. Whitman, you testified that you developed your technical expertise through independent research. Can you explain why your business plan contains verbatim quotes from your sister's private research notes? Danny stumbled through an explanation about similar thought processes and quotes shared family experiences. But his answers became increasingly incoherent as Marcus presented evidence of specific theft. When shown the file access logs from Thanksgiving, Danny claimed he'd only been browsing my laptop out of curiosity about my work. So you admit accessing your sister's private files without permission? I was just interested in what she was working on. Family members share ideas all the time. And you admit copying her proprietary algorithms into your own development documents. I may have taken some inspiration from our conversations about the technology space. Mr. Whitman, these aren't conversations. These are your sister's private source code files. How do you explain having identical implementations of algorithms she spent months developing? Danny's defense collapsed entirely when Marcus presented evidence of his attempts to cover up the theft after the story went public. Emails to his lawyers discussing how to minimize the appearance of borrowing and text messages asking friends to delete social media posts that might contradict his timeline revealed a consciousness of guilt that destroyed any remaining credibility. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours, returning with a verdict that sent shockwaves through the Seattle tech community. Guilty on all counts: intellectual property theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud investors. The foreman read the verdict in a steady voice that made Danny visibly slump in his chair, the reality of his situation finally penetrating the denial he'd maintained throughout the trial. Judge Morrison's sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks later, with the courtroom again packed with observers eager to see the conclusion of a case that had redefined how the startup world approached intellectual property protection. Danny's lawyers pleaded for leniency, emphasizing his lack of prior criminal history and the family relationship that had created the opportunity for theft. But Judge Morrison's statement before announcing the sentence made clear that she understood the broader implications of the case. Mr. Whitman, you didn't just steal your sister's work. You undermined the trust that makes innovation possible, defrauded investors who relied on your false representations, and attempted to build your entire new career on someone else's creativity. This court must send a clear message that intellectual property theft will not be tolerated, especially when it involves family relationships that create unique opportunities for betrayal. Danny received 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. Additionally, he was ordered to pay restitution of $2 million, representing the estimated value of my stolen intellectual property, plus damages for the harm to my professional reputation and business opportunities. The civil component of our lawsuit concluded with an even more comprehensive victory. Danny was permanently enjoined from any involvement in meditation technology development, required to publish public apologies acknowledging his theft, and ordered to transfer all assets related to MindFlow technologies to me. The company he'd built on my stolen work would now become the foundation for my own properly credited innovations. 6 months after the trial concluded, I stood in the conference room at Cascade Ventures, signing the final documents for a Series A funding round that would bring MindBridge to market with full acknowledgement of my role as the genuine innovator. Jennifer Walsh had become not just an investor but a mentor, helping me navigate the business development aspects of technology entrepreneurship that my technical background hadn't prepared me for. This case has changed how the entire VC community approaches due diligence on founder backgrounds, Jennifer told me as we finalized the investment terms. Nobody wants to be the firm that funds stolen IP. Your victory has probably prevented dozens of similar thefts by making the consequences too severe to risk. Marcus had returned to his regular practice, but the publicity from our case had established him as the premier attorney for intellectual property protection in family and startup contexts. His phone rang constantly with calls from inventors whose relatives or business partners had stolen their work, seeking the kind of comprehensive justice we'd achieved. The best part, Marcus told me over dinner at our favorite restaurant, is that we've created legal precedent that will protect other innovators for decades. Every family member or business partner who considers stealing someone's work will have to weigh the risk of facing the same consequences Danny did. The tech community's response to our victory had been overwhelmingly positive, with prominent founders sharing their own experiences of theft and betrayal while praising the precedent we'd established. MindBridge became more than just a meditation app. It became a symbol of authentic innovation triumphing over stolen concepts. My relationship with my parents remained strained but was slowly healing. They'd eventually acknowledged that Danny's actions went far beyond normal family disputes, particularly after seeing the evidence presented in court. Mom had called to apologize for initially doubting my version of events, admitting that Danny's charm had made them want to believe his explanations rather than confront the ugly reality of what he'd done. I raised both of you to be honest and ethical, she told me during a difficult phone conversation several months after the trial. I failed somewhere with Danny, and I'm sorry that failure hurt you so deeply. Danny himself had disappeared into the federal prison system, serving his sentence while his former colleagues in the finance world moved on without him. Occasionally, I wondered if he understood the full scope of what he'd lost, not just in terms of career prospects and financial consequences, but in the permanent destruction of trust between us. The final irony came 18 months after our court victory, when MindBridge launched to widespread acclaim and commercial success. Tech reviewers praised the sophisticated biometric integration, the adaptive AI that personalized meditation experiences, and the intuitive user interface that made complex technology feel effortless. Everything Danny had tried to steal credit for was now properly attributed to its actual creator, and the world could see the difference between authentic innovation and borrowed concepts. Standing in my new company's headquarters, surrounded by the team of engineers and designers who'd helped bring MindBridge to market, I reflected on the journey from family betrayal to entrepreneurial success. Danny's theft had nearly destroyed my confidence as an innovator, but fighting back had revealed strengths I hadn't known I possessed. Marcus found me there late one evening, reviewing user feedback from our first 100,000 customers. People were writing to thank us for creating technology that actually helped them manage stress and find peace, unaware that their positive experiences validated years of research and development that someone had once tried to claim as his own. "Any regrets?" Marcus asked, settling into the chair beside my desk. I thought about the question seriously, considering everything we'd lost and everything we'd gained through the legal battle that had consumed our lives for over a year. The family relationships that might never fully heal, the emotional toll of public litigation, the constant stress of fighting someone I'd once loved and trusted. "No regrets," I said finally. Danny made his choice when he decided to steal my work. I made mine when I decided to fight back. The difference is that my choice was about protecting what I'd created, while his was about taking what someone else had built. Outside the office windows, Seattle's skyline glittered in the darkness, a city built on innovation and the dreams of people willing to turn their ideas into reality. Somewhere in that same city, other inventors were probably working late into the night, perfecting technologies that might change the world. Thanks to our case, they now knew that their work was protected, that theft would face consequences, and that authentic innovation would ultimately triumph over stolen concepts. Danny had taught me that family bonds could be broken by greed and deception, but Marcus had shown me that some alliances grow stronger under pressure. The brother who'd betrayed my trust was serving time in federal prison, while the man who'd helped me fight back had become my husband and business partner in the technology company, built on properly credited innovations. In the end, Danny hadn't just stolen my intellectual property, he'd given me the opportunity to prove that authentic creators don't give up when faced with theft and betrayal. We fight back, we protect what we've built, and we make sure the world knows exactly who deserves credit for changing it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.